With dinosaurs giving us the biggest terrestrial animals in Earth's history, surely it would take an animal capable of some extremely intimidating sizes and capabilities to stand up to many of them. And believe it or not, mammals actually gave this a pretty admirable go in the predator department. Within the last 2.5 million years, Earth was going through a time known as the Pleistocene, famous for what we typically think of when we hear the term Ice Age, as well as for showing a peak in terms of consistently oversized mammals, or what is often dubbed the Pleistocene megafauna. One of these was a member of the Tremarctinae, or the short-faced bears, of which discoveries of remains date back to 1852, but it wasn't actually named until 1880 by Hermann Burmeister as Arctotherium. This bear would have looked very recognisable as a member of its family, with a relatively large body, small rounded ears, and what seemingly appeared to be a particularly short snout. Now I only say seemingly because the snout itself wasn't actually particularly physically short, but was actually more of an illusion owing to the fact that the skull of Arctotherium was unusually deep. Essentially, this bear would have looked incredibly similar to its closest extant relative, the South American spectacled bear, just scaled up a lot. Speaking of which, how much should we scale this thing up? Well, Arctotherium stood at around 5.5 to 6 feet tall when in a quadrupedal stance, and up to 4.3 meters or 14 feet tall when rearing up on its hind legs, which is scarily bigger than that of today's biggest bear, the polar bear. We are talking about a bear that can look over an African bush elephant. But potentially more impressive than Arctotherium's height was its weight. Mammals, when compared to other megafauna, such as, say, dinosaurs, are actually incredibly dense. Just through the nature of our bones and overall structure, we seem to be pretty heavy for our height or length. Hence one of the reasons that mammals are yet to get as big as dinosaurs. Simply because we'd just be crushed under our own weight on land. And the same applies here to Arctotherium. Despite it seeming medium-sized visually when compared to a dinosaur, Arctotherium was packing some serious concealed junk in the trunk, with weight estimates of the largest specimens coming in at an average of between 1,000 to 1,700 kilograms, or around 2,200 to 3,700 pounds. But it's possible that particularly large individuals could potentially reach up to around 2,042 kilograms, or around 4,500 pounds. Now in terms of mass, which is what we normally go for in terms of size in zoology, this would actually make the largest Arctotherium around 800 pounds heavier than your average Allosaurus, which is insane. So now that you've got an idea of just how big this big booty bear was, let's take a look at what kind of environment it inhabited. Now several species from this genus appear to have led from one to the other, with each subsequent species having an ever so slight shift in their ecological role. So I'll describe the environment broadly and get specific with each one. Arctotherium has been found in formations all over Central and South America, dating at between 2.6 million to 10,000 years ago. The continent at the time was characterized by a further cooling and drying as the world entered the most recent ice age, with coniferous forests, tundras, and vast grasslands taking up most of the space, giving way to a more equal number of larger animals such as proboscideans like mammoths and mastodons, giant sloths, armadillos, saber-toothed cats, and terror birds. Now this mix of animals is important here as they were mutual migrants thanks to North and South America finally joining. This event is known as the Great American Interchange and it's an important enough event to do a whole future video on, but for now I do touch upon it here. Arctotherium was part of this two-way migration, going from North to South America before settling and diversifying into subsequent species. Whilst the earliest findings are indeterminate species in Central America, the largest and earliest confirmed species in South America was Arctotherium angustidens, which occupied more of the southern regions of South America. Here it enjoyed its time as one of the top predators of the region, taking over from the Sparassodonts and forest racids, which had all but gone extinct. It was omnivorous, but carbon isotopes show that it had a preference for meat, feeding via both predation and scavenging on the various equids, camelids, tapirs, ground sloths, glyptodonts, gomphotheres and toxodonts in an environment that consisted mostly of wide open plains and some sporadic forested areas, not too dissimilar to modern day Argentina. However, by the mid-Pleistocene we see Arctotherium angustidens go extinct as what is termed the South American predator guild diversified more and more thanks to North American species joining the party, including many felids like pumas and saber-toothed cats, canids, mustelids, and possibly even our own genus, Homo. From here, the genus then diversified into 4 smaller species that spread out further around the continent and began to lean more into omnivory in order to deal with the increased competition from other carnivores. The 4th and last species in this genus's timeline was A. wingi, which occupied the northern regions of South America, living mostly in more closed tropical regions such as rainforests. Due to the abundance of other large carnivores pushing this giant bear out, Arctotherium wingi was a far cry from how the genus started, being the smallest species at between 50 to 150 kilograms or 110 to 330 pounds, and being mostly herbivorous, partaking in meat eating very rarely. This likely sounds familiar since when the last species died out around 10,000 years ago, the modern spectacled bear became its successor for this ecological niche. However, there have been some question marks on if things were quite this linear, with many paleontologists pointing out that the most recent species of A. wingi actually shows the most amount of basal traits, suggesting that this species had a much more ancestral position in the genus, and much earlier origins, only appearing so late in the fossil record due to the poor preservation potential of the tropical regions. Now, given this variety in sizes and niches occupied, it goes without saying that their lifestyles would have varied this much as well. While A. wingi was almost identical in terms of lifestyle to the spectacled bear, A. angustidens lived as a mega-sized predator/scavenger, with 3 individuals of various ages and a paleoburrow suggesting that they may have lived in family groups, settling in caves thought to have been excavated by the giant sloth Xenarthra. Another likely possibility is that these species use these caves for quasi-hibernation, much like modern ursine bears, in order to deal with the harsher seasons of southern South America in comparison to the more tropical ones of the northern regions. Another short-faced bear to touch upon here is Arctotherium's North American counterpart, Arctodus. Now, this guy's often mixed up with Arctotherium, but for good reason. Not only does Arctodus belong to the same subfamily, it also existed around the same time in the neighbouring connected continent and roughly matched Arctotherium angustidens in size. 2 main species exist here, being Arctodus pristinus, or the lesser short-faced bear, and Arctodus simus, or the greater short-faced bear, with the latter growing up to 5'6" at the shoulder, 11 foot tall on their rear legs, and up to around 950 kilograms or just over 2,000 pounds. Now, I've concentrated mostly on the largest short-faced bear for this video, but Arctodus wasn't too far behind in size and lived a similar lifestyle, so I thought it was worth mentioning considering how often they're mentioned in conjunction with each other. Anyway, please let me know what you think of the content, because I'm constantly reading through and trying to implement all the feedback that I get to improve it. So any sort of feedback would be greatly appreciated. So whilst you're doing that, I'm going to answer today's question, which comes from Alina Haas, who has asked, what dinosaur could make a good pet if it was alive today? Good one. Well, what makes a good pet is really subjective. And some people don't like the idea of reptiles as pets, and some do. Some people get invertebrates as pets. Some people are cat people. Some people are dog people. You get the idea. I'm also not going to say birds because that is technically correct, but I think it's cheating. Another factor at play is obviously the fact that we don't know what kind of behaviour they displayed, and a more docile disposition is obviously favourable. So before we get into that, let's just address the practicality elephant in the room. You can't fit an elephant in a room. So let's try and stick to dinosaurs that, when fully grown, didn't get larger than, say, a large dog. So yes, that means we can include the likes of Velociraptor and other small theropods, small ceratopsians, small ornithopods, etc. Next thing we've got to think about here is lifestyle. If a certain animal needs some sort of wide open space, then it's really not good to keep them all cooped up without some sort of regular exercise. So if you take them out on a lead, what kind of danger would they pose? Now, keeping predators as pets is hardly unheard of, and common pets can present a danger in terms of what they're physically capable of. It's just that, again, their domestication means that generally they don't want to go out of their way to cause humans any harm if not threatened. Wild animals, though, are a little more unpredictable, so despite the small stature, I'm not sure I could keep a Velociraptor in my house without treading on quite a few eggshells. So now, with regards to domesticating behaviour, it's now a question of how socially intelligent is the dinosaur. Now, obviously we're sliding further and further into conjecture, but the top pick here is Paraves, the group that includes dromaeosaurs, troodontids, and, what do you know, birds. In joint first place, or at least a very close second to birds, Paleontologists seem to think that troodontids were actually up there in terms of intelligence, and dromaeosaurs have been speculated to varying degrees to have lived in social groups. So there is the potential for a high enough intelligence for domestication. Now, domestication is a topic that I'm not going to pretend that I know a huge amount about, since anthropology is really not my area of expertise. There are plenty of other YouTube videos about it though. But I am just going to pick a couple out that I think are a good mix of intelligence for training and small enough to not present as much for danger. So my picks would be Boeotiraptor, Bambiraptor, and any other smaller troodontid. But that's just my opinion, so please feel free to let me know what kind of dinosaur you think would make the best pet. And if you have a question that you want answering, please make sure you're submitting it in the community post rather than the comment section here, just so they don't get lost. Anyway, thank you for watching this far and giving the support that you do, because it really does mean a lot to me. And I'll catch you guys next time.